Depression is a serious illness that can cause persistent sad moods, loss of interest in ordinary things, constant fatigue, and feelings of hopelessness. Sometimes a person suffering from depression needs support from friends and loved ones to get help from caring professionals. Once depression is diagnosed, treatment is fast and effective. Learn more about depression. Call today for a free brochure. 1-800-421-4211.
Wake up to Good Morning Cleveland, weekdays at 6 a.m.
Hello from New York, I'm Aaron Brown, and in the news at this hour, President Clinton returns home from Vancouver after promising help for Russia and proclaiming a new Democratic partnership with Boris Yeltsin. Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman Colin Powell pays a visit to American troops in Somalia, and a Democratic senator pays a price for opposing the Democratic president. Also coming up in this half hour, the weather and the sports, a longer look at the sights and the statements of the weekend summit in Vancouver, British Columbia. And Barry Mitchell gives us his unique interpretation of the summit's accomplishments with music. All of that coming up in this half hour. We start with the top of the news. Vancouver summit is over, and both Bill Clinton and Boris Yeltsin are proclaiming it a success. Their weekend of talks produced what the American president called a new Democratic partnership. The Russian leader described the two countries as partners and future allies. As expected, Mr. Clinton promised Boris Yeltsin lots of help, money for the Russian economy and the Russian people. The amount of money turned out to be more than expected, a total of $1.6 billion in aid. In fact, though, the money is not new money. It's money that was approved during the Bush administration, but that may not make it any easier for President Clinton to persuade the American people that it is money well spent. Here's ABC's John McWethy.
You can hear the complaints from the streets of New York.
I don't think we should be paying any more for anybody else right now.
To the shopping malls of Atlanta.
And seeing as we got troubles at home, I don't really see where we need to be feeding the Russians, more or less.
With public opinion surveys showing only lukewarm support for helping Russia, the administration's public relations campaign is focused on one simple message. New loans and aid programs are just as much to America's benefit as they are to Russia's.
Disintegrating Russia would probably also be a resumption of an arms race. Disintegrating Russia does not provide market opportunities for the United States.
Also, new aid proposals to Russia are being sold as different than old aid programs, which were only marginally effective.
There's enormous cynicism, both here in the Congress and amongst the American people, as to whether those funds are being effectively spent.
Corruption and inefficiencies in the Russian economy cause some to adopt the attitude that even trying to help is just throwing money into a black hole. Though often a critic of such spending, David Obey argues this effort is different.
This is the single most important international problem that we have faced since the end of the Cold War.
Administration officials say they have been pleasantly surprised to find that both Democrats and Republicans in Congress seem to support the idea of helping the Russians, even if the public is less enthusiastic. On this one spending issue, Bill Clinton may have a relatively free hand. John McWethy, ABC News, the State Department.
Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Colin Powell, is visiting the more than 12,000 U.S. troops who are still in Somalia. The UN is scheduled to take control of the peacekeeping mission in Somalia on the 1st of May, but continued violence could delay the transfer. Meanwhile, in the port city of Kismayu, the Red Cross has suspended its operations. It did so yesterday after 4 grenades were thrown into its compound. The Democrats in the Senate will try again today to end the Republican filibuster. The president's economic stimulus package. At stake is not only the $16 billion package, but the Easter recess for senators. Meanwhile, one conservative Democrat has found that crossing the president has a price. Here's ABC's Sheila Cast.
It was a handshake without much warmth. Richard Shelby of Alabama had just cast one of 2 Democratic votes in the Senate against the president's budget plan. Small surprise, the White House gave Shelby just 1 ticket for this celebration of the Crimson Tide of his alma mater, the University of Alabama. 6 weeks ago, when Vice President Gore came to lobby for the just unveiled economic plan, Shelby attacked it publicly.
It's high on taxes and low on cuts.
Within a week, the White House reacted. It started moving 90 federal jobs from the Marshall Space Flight Center in Alabama to Texas.
They saw Shelby as having humiliated the vice president and taken some shots at the president unnecessarily. They want to make an example of him that you can't get away with this.
The White House and the people down there running the White House are either off to a bad start or they're trying to send the wrong message.
White House officials say it's the right message. Whether or not they can take credit for it, no other Democrats have joined Shelby in voting against the president on every key budget vote and against shutting down the Republican filibuster on the stimulus package. Sheila Cast, ABC News, Washington.
Today marks the beginning of Passover, and that has heightened tensions among federal agents staking out the Branch Davidian cult compound outside of Waco, Texas. An FBI official says cult leader David Koresh has told his followers that this Passover will be the last they spend together. Still in Waco yesterday, there was a touch of humor in the midst of all the gloom.
I noticed in the TV guide this morning that ABC is broadcasting the 10 Commandments tonight, and by my count, Vern is in violation of about 4 or 5 already. So I was hoping if he was listening, maybe he might try to tune that in tonight and get himself straightened out. Thank you.
Vern is Vernon Howell, who is, and that's the former name of David Koresh. Yesterday, 2 lawyers who had tried to end the standoff went into the compound with religious information for the cult leader. They came out saying he would surrender after Passover. Checking the weather, scattered light showers and snow will fall across the Rockies today. Temperatures across the northern half of the country will remain chillier than they should be for this time of the year. Mostly sunny skies will be the norm for the Northeast for a change. World News Now National Temperature Index, 616 or 324 Celsius. Gospel singers in New York were among those marking yesterday's 25th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. We listened to them as we check today's forecast.
World News Now weather, brought to you by Alamo Rent-A-Car. World News Now sports, brought to you by FTD.
Slam dunk time at the Final Four weekend down in New Orleans, and the college guys pretty good at this, almost as good as the guys in the NBA. Came down to a 2-man contest. J.R. Ryder of Nevada, Las Vegas. Didn't he get suspended for some reason or another? Anyway, not a bad dunk that. This is Lewis Davis of Northeast Louisiana. All right, here's this is the one that won it. It's Ryder, and he does win it. Blindfolded, he dunks it anyway. Oh, my goodness. Well, there you have it. We've all done that in our backyard, but to do it in front of all those people, that's what's tough. Been a rash of fights in the NBA in the last several weeks, several of them more serious than the average basketball scuffle. Why, even on TV the other night during a hockey fight, the announcer said it looks like an NBA game has broken out. He didn't blow the line. In our ESPN sports feature this half hour, 2 reporters debate whether there is too much violence in the NBA. We've added completely peaceful scores.
Let me ask you something, Mr. Basketball Purist. Name the last week you can remember when a fight didn't break out in the NBA. And name the last time the NHL was embarrassed on a consistent basis the way the NBA is right now. Derek Coleman, Shaquille O'Neal, the Knicks and the Suns.
Mike, I will admit that the boys have gotten a bit rambunctious lately.
Oh, thank you very much.
Bit rambunctious lately, but let's not get too carried away and get hyperbolic and start thinking it's like the NHL, where all this macho business is part of the fabric. What I would do, by the way, is get their attention, give them like automatic 5-game suspensions for the throwing of a punch, which would equate to a BMW or a Range Rover, something they can understand. I think we can get things back on an even keel.
See, that's the thing. You're starting to think like an NBA player. Shaquille O'Neal gets fined $50,000 the other day, and he says, hey, there's more where that came from. These guys have no respect for money. They obviously have no respect for the league right now, and somebody's going to get hurt the way they did in the old days when Rudy Tomjanovich went down.
No, see, everybody wants to go back to the Rudy. That was a freak of physics, a freak that will never happen again. A strong guy, coming in. It was all to do with stuff and plaster I never learned.
Strong guys aren't throwing the punches anymore?
Hey, this league is nothing like it was 30 or 40 years ago, by the way. I mean, that's when men were men and fights were breaking out every 6 seconds.
Before you guys start swinging at each other, I just have one. Who really won the fight between Larry Bird and Julius Erving?
ML Clark.
God, it was like a pillow fight. God.
Can you get traction on sneakers? Never mind.
ABC's World News Now continues after this from our ABC stations. Summits just aren't what they used to be. Back in the dark days of the Cold War, summits could be rough going as any negotiations in history. Nikita Khrushchev gave Jack Kennedy not 1 inch in Vienna in 1961. Richard Nixon opened the era of détente with Leonid Brezhnev, but just to help it along, he played the Chinese card against the Soviets. Today, there is no evil empire, and in that regard, summits lack the drama that enemies bring to the peace table. Still, there was a story out there in the West. The U.S. aid package presented the Russians with a problem of sorts. The money was needed. The impression the money creates was not. The Russians need handouts. Whether Yeltsin survives in the long run is a story for another time. The summit is just a chapter. Here is how it played out in Vancouver.
Also here the same. А посмотрите, вот здесь тоже coming out of the старое дерево было.
Тоже лет 500, 600.
500, 600 years old. Like the children in school. They don't need to go teach me.
Thank you very much.
Журналистский штурм.
Борис Николаевич, вы довольны тем, что они... How's the reaction so far to your program? How's the reaction so far to your program today?
It's been good. And we're talking about where we go from here.
И президент Соединенных Штатов. Mesdames et messieurs, le président de la Fédération de Russie et le président des États-Unis.
In our discussions, President Yeltsin and I reached several important agreements on the ways in which the United States and the other major industrialized democracies can best support Russian reforms. First are programs that can begin immediately. I discussed with President Yeltsin the initiatives totaling $1.6 billion intended to bolster political and economic reforms in Russia. These programs already are funded. They can provide immediate and tangible results for the Russian people. We will invest in the growth of Russia's private sector through two funds to accelerate privatization and to lend to new, small, private businesses. We will resume grain sales to Russia and extend $700 million in loans for Russia to purchase American grain. We will launch a pilot project to help provide housing and retraining for the Russian military officers as they move into jobs in the civilian economy. Because the momentum for reform must come upward from the Russian people, not down from their government, we will expand exchanges between American farmers, business people, students, and others with expertise working directly with the Russian people. And we agreed to make a special effort to promote American investment, particularly in Russia's oil and gas sectors. To give impetus to this effort, we will ask Vice President Gore and Russian Prime Minister Chernomyrdin to chair a new commission on energy and space. Second, beyond these immediate programs, the President and I agreed that our partnership requires broader perspectives and broader cooperative initiatives, which I will discuss with the Congress when I return home. We expect to do more than we are announcing today in housing and technical assistance, in nuclear safety and cooperation on the environment, and in important exchanges. Third, this challenge we face today is clearly not one for the United States and Russia alone. I have asked our allies in the G7 to come forward with their own individual bilateral initiatives. Canada and Britain have already done so, and I expect others to follow. President Yeltsin and I also discussed plans for the G7 nations to act together in support of Russia's reforms. The foreign and finance ministers of the G7 are meeting in Tokyo on April 14th and 15th. Coordinated efforts are required to help Russia stabilize its economy and its currency. The